All right. Hey guys, Jason Wooler here. Hope everybody is doing well. Hope you had a wonderful weekend. It's been hot out. I don't know where everybody's located, but in California, we've had record heat. So it's nice to actually be indoors today. But again, I just really appreciate everybody taking the time to join us today is because we have a very special topic that is very near and dear to my heart that I want to talk about. Obviously, everybody is very aware that we have a pandemic going on with COVID, and it's especially in the U.S., it's affected over 5 million people. It's killed over close to 170,000. But one thing that is not being talked about is the mental health component, suicide, addiction, overdoses. I just did a bunch of research over the weekend, and we have surpassed over 150,000 deaths due to overdoses and suicide. So we actually really have a pandemic within the pandemic. And that's why I am happy to be here with a very, very phenomenal group of people. We got a plethora, we got doctors, we got therapists, we got moms, we got singers, we got a group of people here that we're going to talk to, and we're going to get their perspective on what it is that they are doing during this very, very tough time. One of the number one forms of happiness is, and it's been the longest living study that's been done at Harvard, is through human connection. And obviously, a lot of us have been isolated and in a form of depression and in a very hard state, especially those that are in recovery. We need an outlet. We need a place to be able to go. We need fellowship. We need that foundation. So we're going to talk to some of the best in the business, and we're going to get some insight. I'm here to host you, and I'm going to kick it off. I'm just going to give a basic bio and a brief intro to each individual, and we're going to kick this off with our first guest will be Hillary Roberts, and we'll go from there. And then obviously, please ask questions. You guys, there's a place to submit, especially for certain panelists that you connect with. And at the end, when we are done, we'll have a 15-minute panel Q&A. But we are here for you. We want to raise awareness. We want to bring some education, and we want to hopefully provide some solution. So I'm going to kick this off. We got Lynn Peterson. Lynn Peterson is known for her unbridled passion and fierce commitment to any person in need of care. She has over 35 years of progressive experience in addiction and mental health field. She has received her certifications from UCLA in the chemical dependency and counseling and studies and program management. She holds a KDAC 2, an ICADAC as well, and received her intervention training from the prestigious Johnson Institute. We have Rupa Ward, who is an MA AMFT, and she also helps with EMDR. I think I said something wrong. She can correct me in a minute. Rupa Ward has an MA in psychology with a marriage and family therapy emphasis. She has been participating certified EMDR therapist for nearly a decade. And she also has an extensive training and experience in individual, family and couples therapy, addiction, recovery, loss and grief, trauma resolution, group counseling, and somatic method. Man, sounds like I need to talk to you after this. We also got Rev Arlene. Rev Arlene Hilton is the spiritual director for Safe Harbor Treatment Center for women. She is an ordained non-denominational minister in the state of California. Rev Arlene supports individuals in realizing their highest potential. Her support of her clients in recovery is based on each person realizing a higher power that is active and fully available in their life. Next, we have Hillary Roberts, is a singer and songwriter who uses the darkness of her past to inspire others. Her goal with her music and speaking is to be a beacon of hope and empowerment to all. In 2009, she founded the Red Songbird Foundation, which was established to help the less fortunate obtain the care they need for recovery from trauma, mental health, alcoholism, and substance abuse. Jana Woodbury. Jana is a good friend of mine. Jana Woodbury can be noted for her philanthropy and her advocacy work in raising awareness towards addiction and mental health issues. Specifically, Jana was a part of an effort to shed light on family systems of addiction. Her family was featured on Sesame Street, the parental addiction, series featuring her family, who recently was honored with a Daytime Emmy for the short film. Jana has also been featured in publications such as Cosmopolitan and other online publications for sharing her knowledge and work in the addiction field. She's amazing. Worked with her for years. Last but not least, Dr. Daniel Hedrick from Trace Vistas. Love this guy. He's treated me personally and many of my family members over the years. He is an individual with over 30 years of experience. Dr. Daniel Hedrick is an ASAM certified fellow. He has worked in the treatment space and ran and headed Hoag and Mission Hospital for over 20 years. He's detoxed over 20,000 people, and he has now his own facility in San Juan Capistrano. So we got the group with us. We got the crew. Sorry, guys, if I mess some stuff up. You can yell at me when you come on. But we are going to kick this off. Hillary, I'm going to jump straight into you. Enough for me. I do want to say thank you to everybody for joining us. Thank you, Safe Harbor. Thank you, Trace Vistas. I know everybody is very busy right now in this time, so thank you. So Hillary, I'm going to turn it over to you and ask, as somebody that has gone through trauma, that has gone through substance abuse, how has this pandemic that we are in with COVID affected you personally, and what are some things that you've done for your recovery, and what are some of the tools that you could share with our guests?
Oh, thank you so much, Jason. And thank you so much to all our panelists ahead of time for what you're going to be bringing to the people out there today. In May, I turned 23 years sober, and I'm also a girl that had to face trauma in sobriety and other aspects of painful transformation. And I can tell you, so I've overcome a lot, but I am a girl that I am part of a recovery network that there's a lot of human interaction. And it was really hard for me to deal with this in the beginning. And I did face some depression in this, and fear and different things like that. And so I allowed myself a small period of time to, be in that. And then I'm like, nope, we got to get to the solution here. We have to get to the solution. And the biggest thing was telling on myself, getting my ego out of it. Because at the time when this started, I had 22 years sober, and I've learned that I have to keep my ego out of it. And I need to be transparent about where I really am, because it's about a we deal. And if I can't let you see into me, which intimacy is into me see, then you can't help me. We can't help each other if we're not being completely transparent. The other thing is that I had to really start, jumping into praying and meditating, reaching out to others. What can I do for you? I started taking elderly people within that network groceries. How can I be of service? I also really started diving into my creativity, and my creativity is music. And so I really dove into that. And the other thing I wasn't doing in my depression, it's about taking action. I cannot think myself into right feeling. I have to bring the body, and the mind will follow. I have to act myself into right thinking. And just like I learned in early sobriety, it's about acting as if. And if I was a person that was sober, what actions would I take? If I'm a person during a pandemic who also deals with, all kinds of human emotion, what are the actions I take as a healthy human being? I need to exercise. The food has been up and down for me because I'm a sugaraholic. That's still my thing, but, and so I'd kind of go to extremes a little bit with that, but, nothing like it used to be. So it's about exercising. It's about reaching out to others and connecting, creating music, really diving deeper into ways. I do all kinds of things today. I mean, I do breathing techniques. I do stuff with oils. I know that might sound a little strange to people. I started picking that up in the last few years when I was facing some crazy relationship stuff that I had to surrender on a whole new level. But it's been about spending and also looking at the gifts. I had myself and girls that I mentor write out what are the gifts from the pandemic, because they were writing about, how hard it was and how difficult, but what are some of the gifts? Well, the gift is I can slow down, because I was traveling all the time. I was touring, promoting music, doing all these things. I can stop, listen to the birds, see the butterflies. I can watch the sunsets. I can take walks. I can spend time with my family, like doing the mundane things magnificently. And that is what is, and it's really about also taking a look at my thoughts. Is this a negative thought? Or is this a proactive thought? Is anything negative about me, which is what depression kind of takes us down, that negative thinking, any negative thought about myself, or going into fear mongering crazy town, it doesn't help. So can I stop that thought, pause? Can I turn it around? Can I turn it around into something positive? And that has been an exercise too, and to list those qualities about myself, about others. And the bottom line is that I'm a woman of faith. So God has been through a lot of things in this world. We've had thousands of years on this planet, and this is not going to be the thing. This is not going to be, and if it is, it's just going to change my address. So, I can either stay in the problem or I can get into the solution. What is my choice to be right now? And I don't want to wait till I feel that, Jason. I mean, it's really about taking that action and being easy on myself. It's okay that I struggled in the beginning of the pandemic. It's okay. It's okay hurting for the world. All those things are okay, but to stay stuck in it and that quicksand is not okay. So it's about picking up tools and doing those things. And, we launched our podcast for Red Songbird Foundation, and that's been a wonderful thing, working with my co-chair, Jason Waller, who actually he and Alex orchestrated this whole pandemic inside a pandemic. And, just this morning, I got a call that a 19-year-old boy that I used to teach singing lessons to took his own life. He's making $30,000 a month as a YouTuber, being a young father. They had a baby at 16, just had another one this year. And he started having a problem with alcohol and drugs. He did not accept the help. His own father is sober, and he hung himself on Friday. And that, my friend, that shows you that money doesn't fix it. Fame doesn't fix it. All of these things don't fix it. My own cousin killed himself, who had a scholarship to Yale. Beautiful, gorgeous man, heartbroken, and killed himself. My other cousin, 4 years ago, she was thrown into a field after overdosing on what she thought was heroin, but the first shot killed her, and it was fentanyl. And that is without a pandemic. So imagine the isolation, because isolation is what we don't want. So if you're hurting out there, and I want to speak to those people, if you're hurting, there are recovery programs. There are therapy that offer a sliding scale, and there's suicide hotlines. There's the trauma hotlines. Reach out, send an email to us on our foundation. You can reach out to me or Jason on Instagram, Facebook, and we will get with you. We don't ignore you on these things. We take this very seriously. I love getting to do my music, but my primary purpose is to help the hurting people of the world. Period. And you must reach out. No matter what's going on with the pandemic, you must reach out and not isolate. And see, and I struggled with that for the first week. It was like I was isolating and binge watching TV and eating and doing my stuff. And then I had to get back on the bandwagon. And, it's how can I get out of myself and be of service to other people? So I just want to leave with you. Don't do it alone. Act yourself into right thinking, and don't wait for you to feel okay to do it. Just take the action, as hard as it is. And you can do this. We are here for you.
Amazing, Hillary. And I think you bring up a really important fact. I think there's so many amazing things you brought up, but there's one thing for people out there is exercise. Your brain produces more potent chemicals than heroin. You just got to let it work. The serotonin, the dopamines, get those things moving, get those things going. But service is a huge thing. And Hillary, I'm very sorry to hear about your friend. I did not know that. But it just goes to show, I mean, alcohol sales are up 400% right now. Marijuana sales are up 250%. I mean, the numbers are astronomical. It is crazy. And people are looking for anything to be able to get out of self because they're in such a dark place right now. So your story is very relatable, and I really appreciate that. Thank you. Jana, moving over to you. There's obviously a lot of women out there. There is a, sorry, somebody tried calling me. There's a lot of women out there. There's a lot of moms, that are single moms, that are married, that have work, that are in business. How do you as a mom manage all the stuff that you are going through? Because it's challenging for me as a dad. So I'd love to hear from a mother's perspective of what it is that you're doing and managing, and how this has affected you.
Yeah, absolutely. For those of you guys that don't know, I am Jana Woodbury. As Jason mentioned, we've known each other for a while, and a lot of these amazing people I've crossed paths with, and I'm extremely grateful to collaborate and come together to share to the community what we can do. As you guys know, we are in a pandemic within a pandemic. I've known so many people that have taken their lives, that have whether it's from addiction or whatever it is. The reality is there's a lot happening right now. For me in particular, with the pandemic happening, the distance learning, some of you parents may know, happened towards the tail end of the school year. And I actually gratefully was in the process of moving to a different space for my family that was bigger and just more accommodating. I do have 4 children, for those of you who also don't know, ages 11, 7, 3, and Levi just turned 2 yesterday. So just moving in general is naturally, especially with kids, chaotic. But doing that during a pandemic was extremely stressful. Transferring my kids from their learning class to all of the things online that they're familiar with to a new school. They never met their teacher. They didn't know any of the other students in the class, and it was extremely hard. For them and for me. And I remember I was taking a bath one night and I was so stressed out, wanting just to do right by my kids. As a parent, especially as someone that is sober, I, pride myself on being able to be mindful of how I engage my kids, the type of example, I want to be. And I had this beautiful human moment where I was able to just let them know, hey, there is a lot going on. And yes, I'm the parent, but at the same time, as a family, we are in this together and we are going to adjust. And so I had this moment when I was taking a bath, just so stressed out. And I just had that relief of I had been praying just for calm, just please let me say, do, and be in the right position to be that vessel of solution and safety for my kids. And so I had this moment where I'm it's first grade. It's not that big of a deal. It's 6th grade. It's not that big of a deal. As parents right now, I think one of the most important things that we can do is, keep our kids healthy, mindfulness, meditation. For me as a person in recovery, how I wake up in the morning, it's something that I share with my kids. As parents, as someone in recovery, and recreating this dynamic of addiction, this, you learn when it comes to alcoholism and addiction, this is a family system deal. Everyone assumes a role. And even through sobriety, I've had moments of being unhealthy. Hillary knows I, struggle with codependency. I've had these moments where I've had to shift, and something that I think as a parent, that is extremely important is being consistent for our kids. And so I have 3 different things I want to share with you guys. I did a little bit of research, and I'm really big just on solution and spirituality, and a couple words that just, if you could take away, the first one to be mindful of is virtue. And to me, virtue is just simply involving, the ability to regulate our actions and our words. And something that we have the opportunity to do every day is start that fresh day. And something I like to do is choose a word such as virtue and be mindful of it throughout the day. Just to be able to come to it. It's for me, it's a grounding technique and really embodying these virtues. And so virtue, if anything, just remember that our actions, how we show up, how we relate to people, that is the most consistent thing. And our perception is just so I mean, it's important in terms of navigating through the pandemic. Wisdom also is something else. And I do share this with my kids too. It's, you know, wisdom is applied common sense. Well, that's one definition, but in particular, you know, through this time, there's so much misinformation. There's, you know, opinions, there's disconnect. But like Jason said, the number one thing is human connection. How can we connect with people? How can we be that vessel of hope and that safety? And so wisdom is, you know, something that I have to challenge myself to do daily. If I am overwhelmed or struggling, you know, I want to come and act from a place of, you know, whether it's a victim or whatever, being able to tap into that, just that collective wisdom that I've gotten through sobriety. I'm so grateful I'm sober, honestly. And that's just it. There are a lot of people that aren't, you know, through this pandemic, and it's isolation, you know, the depression, whatever it is, disconnect as a human isn't good. And so we learn, you know, we replace those things with drugs and alcohol. We use those things to cope, to overcompensate, to fill whatever void it is that we have. And so, you know, as a mom, as a wife, you know, it has been challenging through this pandemic. And again, just being able to show up and be consistent and staying humbled in my recovery principles is essentially what's gotten me through, you know, as a parent. And then quickly, something I want to touch on too, even being, you know, a professional in this industry has been extremely challenging as well. Supporting people and navigating, you know, do I go fly to treatment? You know, how do I get treatment? There's so much fear in and of itself just going to treatment, and then you add a global pandemic on top of it. Now they have to fly to treatment, get COVID tested, go through quarantine, potentially be positive, and be more disconnected for, you know, potentially 2 weeks. That's a lot. And so again, you know, today I'm committed, and I choose to embody these recovery principles, and again, to try to just be that consistent energy for other people, and especially for my kids. Our kids are the future, and this pandemic 100% is impacting them, so much so that, you know, I found something Celia wrote, and she was talking about how sick of this pandemic she is, and these kids are online, you know, distance learning, all of that. So imagine, you know, that their little minds just being consumed with that. And so I just want you guys all to know that I love you. If someone, you know, if you haven't heard that from a while, just know that everyone here on this panel are committed to just showing the way and being that beacon of hope and that light. So I'm
Jana,
Yeah.
question for you, because you bring up a great point. There's a lot of people out there that need help but don't know where to turn, right? What would be your advice?
In terms of?
Just, I mean, whether it's the fear, whether it's, you know, I mean, is there in a place of not even knowing? I mean, what would your takeaway be in regards to somebody that's like, hey, look, I'm in a place where I want help, but you know, the pandemic, there's fear of that, but just in general of getting help. Let's just make it from a 50,000 foot view. If somebody's wanting help, but just doesn't know where to start, what would be your advice?
Yeah, I mean, what I would look at first is if it's a viable option for you to even, you know, say we're talking about treatment, do you have resources locally? If you don't, I know there are several hotlines, but if you don't, you know, everyone here is most of all based in California, but reaching out. I mean, ultimately, that's just what you have to do. Acknowledgement is a huge, you know, that's acknowledging that you have an issue is tricky in and of itself. We know that we always, you know, we struggle with that sometimes as people in recovery trying to get sober, but you have to reach out, be open-minded and willing enough to acknowledge again that something's not right.
Yeah, knowing you're not alone, right? I mean, there is a way, you know, getting open, getting honest, being transparent, you know, and connecting with somebody else, I think is one of the key things. And Jana, I love what you say. I mean, what I really take away, and maybe people can utilize this, is I really hear you using something I call the AAA modality. It's called awareness, acceptance, and action. If you're not aware, you're not going to be able to accept. And if you can't accept, you can't take action. So being mindful and in the present and actually obtaining awareness of what's going on within your life and getting to a place where you can accept that and then actually pausing and then taking direction to perform an action.
Absolutely.
So wonderful stuff. I love it.
Yeah.
You've got a great family. I'm happy to hear you're doing good. All right, we are going to switch over to the doc. My man, Dr. Daniel Hedrick. Man, you've been in this space for a long, long time. And
Yeah.
I don't know that we've ever had something like this happen in that duration of the 20 plus years that you've worked in the space. I have a question. I mean, what is your opinion as a doctor? What do we do from here? You know, it's so many people are hopeless. So what would be your suggestion?
Wow. Yeah, it's a real honor, and I'm excited about being here with this panel of groups, and I'm learning so much already. And I'm pretty passionate about my job, but I just get fired up listening to you guys. And yeah, I've been doing this for almost 40 years, working with chemical dependency, and I'm just more excited and even actually more positive in a certain way. Somehow, after all these years of sobriety, you learn to take suffering or problems at kind of like a gift, like we're going to learn something from this. And one thing I was just thinking about when you were saying the statistics and the numbers are out now, that the overdoses this year are up 42% compared to 2019. The deaths are increased by 13% from last year. Fentanyl and speed is up. And like you say, the alcohol revenue is up 55%. But I think what that shows, though, is that recovery really works. I mean, what we're doing really works. And when it stops, the problem soars and gets worse. So I think a lot of people maybe don't even go to ask for help because they don't think that recovery works. But I think it's concrete evidence now. The data supports that whatever we were doing was working, and now all the numbers are soaring. One population that I've just been looking at that I kind of they've been ignored is we've criminalized substance use disorder. So there's a lot of people in jail, and now they're letting them out, early release. Now these people have no support. They're unconnected. There's a lot less treatment facilities, no jobs. They usually don't have insurance. They have a lot of comorbid emotional problems. There's less connection, like we talked about. Even going to the ER is hard because they're all overwhelmed by the COVID thing. And there's less nasal Narcan around, and people are alone using. And so the good old nasal Narcan to prevent overdoses isn't available as much. And even at NIDA, Nora Volkov, who runs NIDA, was talking about how the grants and the research programs have all been frozen and put on hold for chemical dependency. So we're kind of going backwards there, but I think it shows that whatever we were doing really works, because when it's gone, things start to soar out of control. And we've talked a lot about the stigma of things and people not wanting to get help, I think partly because of the stigma. And it turns, the terms that we use, like Gina was talking about virtue and different words, it's important. And I kind of have a problem with the pandemic word. Pandemic, like the virus, it has to do with, well, really like the plague and infections and contagiousness and pestilence and being kind of dirty. And you can even go into being evil. That doesn't really apply to substance use disorders. I think it's kind of going backwards on the stigma. It would be nice to use a different word, like diseases of despair. That's kind of a umbrella. How I see what's going on in our nation is, everybody's on SSRIs and they're hopeless, and suicide rates, not even in people that are addicted, are going up, and this despair. I looked it up yesterday. I just looked up the word, and they use a sentence, the word in a sentence. The very first sentence that they use was quotes, I was in despair, I hit the bottle. That's the example they use. So, people go to chemicals when they're feeling a lot of despair, and despair and stress is a real biologic, chemical, physical change in your brain, and neurotransmitters and your adrenal, cortisol, and all that really shift you around biologically. And if your brain is already kind of in healing mode from drugs, and you just have a short period of sobriety, a few weeks or months, it's going to really set you off. And exercise, like you were saying, Jason, exercise really can reverse that chemically. All those things that stress wind up doing, you can unwind a lot of it with just good old exercise. So the diseases of despair word came from a conference that I went to, and they were talking about this whole umbrella of lack of hope and depression and fatigue and chronic pain. It's actually resulted in the average lifespan in the United States has gone down for the last 3 years in a row. It hasn't happened in other countries. That was happening before the pandemic, but now it's just a lot worse. So
100%. So what do you think is, I mean, a big thing that you talk about often is passion and motivation too. Do you think a lot of that's been robbed from a lot of this and contributing to higher substance abuse and addiction and trauma?
Yeah, I mean, I see that, you know, growing in the last 40 years, talking to adolescents and stuff. 30 or 40 years ago, it seemed like kids had a passion. And now I can go to high schools and I just bring up the word passion and everybody goes blank. In high school, it's like silent. Like, and some kids, people, I'm finding more and more people that never had passion, don't even know, had no idea of a dream or a target or a mission in life, that they never had. They never wanted to write a book or sing a song or be a cop or airline pilot or whatever. Never had passion before.
Why do you think that is?
Wow. I think because we're partly disconnected. Maybe we're disconnected. Well, it's so easy to get a chemical like these, you know, it's so easy to take the easy way out and take a chemical to treat temporarily. They sort of feel like they work, these chemicals, but in the long run, they just make it worse. So chemicals are much more available nowadays. I mean, everybody in their medicine cabinet has strong opiates, you know, and that's the perfect drug for temporary fix of your despair, you know, availability.
No, 100%. I mean, that's I also think we live in such a false sense of reality. You know, I think it's a lot of people are so distracted, and even before, you know, the pandemic, well, let's call it COVID, because I know you don't like the word pandemic. I'll call it the COVID piece. Is, you know, there was still this huge disconnect with individuals, especially the younger demographic, you know, and it's like during this specific time, suicide rates are higher for adolescents and high school kids. The amount of deaths are surpassed COVID for suicide in that demographic. I think there's something there, but there's a huge disconnect, I think, with the younger generation. I think a lot of that has to do with technology. I always, you know, one of my favorite terms is we got to disconnect to connect, because it's so easy. There's a lot of amazing things that come from technology and these different things, you know, and the whole drug piece is another component of it. But I just think in general is we are so hooked in other areas that we're so distracted from what's really even going on.
Yeah, and one thing lately, because my daughter is a singer too, and she's in music school, and Hillary was talking about her passion and intimacy. I mean, singing is a really powerful thing. You just open up your heart and your soul and your spirit. You're totally vulnerable, and that opens up a lot of other people. They feel that feeling, and then they try to open up themselves too. So simple things like music and singing, I think, is very powerful.
Well, and you're somebody that I even look up to. I mean, every day you do exercise, you're at the beach, you're doing swimming, you're getting in the water 5, 6 in the morning. You're like the human seal. I mean, you know, but so you're always staying active. And one thing that I love that I want to just mention, because unfortunately we're running out of time real quick here, is something that you shared with me just a couple of weeks ago. Out of the 15 years I've known you, I never heard this, but you said, I said, what do you do on a daily basis, you know, for your recovery? And he said, you know, the first thing I do when I open my eyes and before my feet hit the floor is I turn over and I read something positive. and you have something that's positive next to your bed. So the moment you wake up, before these things start going, you're implementing something that is positive into the brain. And it's just, it's an amazing thing that I started to do, which then leads me into a gratitude list. And I think you've provided so much here, and I know there's going to be a lot of questions for you that are going to come up after. So thank you for that information.
Awesome. Thank you.
All right. Moving along. Speaking of kids, Lynn Peterson is somebody that works with them. And again, as there's so many kids affected right now, with kids not going to school, and them being removed, having to stay in the home. I feel like right now, either parents are either having another kid or they're getting divorced. It's like the highest domestic violence stuff going on. I mean, there's so much that's happening right now. And the fact that you, Lynn, work with kids, I wanted to talk to you because you've created, some of the most renowned programs, especially on campus. And you actually have, campus student programs for substance abuse. So I would love to hear what you're seeing, what's going on with the kids. Not only what's going on, but what are some of the things parents could do, especially if their kids are going through it and they can see this? How can they be supportive, inspirational, bring motivation? Take it away.
Okay. First off, thank you, Jason and Hillary, for creating this space to be able to do this. And Jana for inviting me in these. I'm just honored to be here. So I'm going to just put that out there. And I want to tell people that are out there right now that maybe haven't come into recovery yet, or you're checking this out just to see, this is what you get. Being in a room of these people are the gifts of sobriety. All you have to do one day at a time is just not pick up, is just not use. You don't even have to want to. You just don't do it. And you can have a life that you sit in a room with the doctor and with Jason and with Hillary. I want you to know it's available to all of us. The only thing we need to do is not drink or use, no matter what. And I want to get that out, but I am Lynn Peterson. I came into these rooms March 11th, 1984. I have 36 years of sobriety. I was, yeah, I know, shocking. We won't even talk about that. But I got sober when I was 20. And one of the things that I say to people often, and, I say a lot of things often that a lot of people aren't like, so I usually say permission to speak freely, because my opinion is this: if we can create space for change to occur, we're halfway there. I don't care why someone gets sober. When people say, well, they have to want it for themselves. Okay, yes. For the chronic relapser, I'll give you that. But otherwise, I don't care if you get sober for your mother, for your father, for the judge. I could care less, because it's not my job to know when your moment of clarity is going to come. And for some people, it may be in this pandemic. And I've worked in adolescent mental health for 36 years. And I started as a client and moved my way up to where I was participating in building 2 of the finest adolescent residential treatment programs in the nation. And from that, and remaining sober through many, many things, I realized that there was a space missing. There was nowhere for adolescents to come to connect just as humans. I'm sitting in a residential program going, I've always been, I don't know about you guys, but as a recovering person, I always think, oh, prevention, oh, awareness, whatever. I was destined to be a dope fan. And nobody could have stopped me. And I had these tapes I was telling myself, and I was a little bit unteachable. I don't know if any of you have been arrogant ever, but sometimes I live there. So I had this moment, right, where I was watching the kids going, what if we could get to them at that initial crisis? What if we could create that space where they didn't have to have a diagnosis for entry, that they didn't have to have a struggle? Because let's face it, every adolescent is struggling by virtue of where their brain development is. They're struggling, they're impulsive, they're making stupid decisions. There are people, right? It's where we came from. And often you'll ask people, well, what if somebody would have had this group for you when you were a teenager? Would it work for you? And many times people who are sober will go, oh no, no one can tell me anything. And I say to them, how do you know? You didn't have a program like this. You don't know. So what happened for me is I shifted. A lot of things in my life changed. I stayed sober through many a thing. One of those things was a divorce. And I decided I helped build another fine program that I was really proud of. But I thought I can go back and do that, or I can in this phase of my life, because I'm not 20 anymore, I can do something that could really make a difference. And so I sold my house and I invested my money in launching a nonprofit called One Recovery. And it's right on topic, Jason. It's One Recovery, where the connection is human. And when I say one recovery, I mean one recovery from all, whether the struggle is substances, disordered eating, a bad day, academic pressure, your mother, it doesn't matter. That if we all come together with human connection, I have the power not only to shift my life, but shift the lives of others when I shift. And if we create that space, it gives the kids a chance to drop an anchor in the moment and look at what they're doing. And of course, like the substance abuse kids are like my wheelhouse, are my favorites. The knuckleheads, forget about it. You know, I love them. And so what I did was I created this program, and then I went to Newport Mesa Unified School District. You know, Newport Beach, you'd be thinking, maybe they wouldn't be so down with this. They opened their doors and said, do it. And I said, well, part of the caveat is I want to have a suspension exchange program. I want to be able to take those kids who are going to be suspended and have them come to 8-1 support group meetings. The caveat was their parents had to go to the parent group, and that's another subject for another day. I had more issue with the parents than I did with the kids. But it offered a true restorative justice vehicle. Because what I say and what I mean is, and I don't even know how many of you were suspended that are recovering, like in high school. Hi, what would have happened if we had the opportunity to be sent to a group where I'm not teaching them about drug addiction, I'm not doing statistics, we're connecting as humans, we're opening a topic, sometimes we're doing artwork, sometimes I'm showing a video clip, sometimes I have an actor come in, a professional skateboarder. They're not all recovering, right? It's that passion, doctor, it's that passion. It's that connection, Hillary. It's everything that we talked about. It's that family, Jana, you know, that maybe they don't have at home. We've created a microcosm on the campus because 20% of the group ends up being those suspended kids. And I'm just going to say, what is the alternative? When a kid is suspended, what do? We send them home with what? With who? Their own worst enemy. To do what? If they got suspended for getting high, what are they doing? Oh, cool, I can get high all day. And then they're out of school for 3 to 5 days. They're getting farther behind because they're not allowed to make up the work. They come back. They have a case of the screw-its, my G version, you know, and they're just like, what does it matter? What does it matter? You know, and I have success stories that blow my mind. Boys who came in like, who are you, right? And I'm like, trust me, I know. And I said, just take a seat. I don't think I should be here. I'm like, that's so great because you already committed, so you're here. So they're in there, and then they look across the room and they see maybe the kid that's socially awkward, the trans kid, the kid that's not from their background. The group captures everyone. It is a group of one. It is a microcosm, not just of the campus, but of the community and the world. And when one shifts, they all shift.
So I have a question for you, Lynn.
Yeah.
I have a question. So, and I think that program's phenomenal.
Thanks for pulling me off my soapbox, because I was like, go ahead.
No, it's amazing. But I think, you know, all those are amazing. And I think those should be implemented for sure. But I have a question specifically for kids. Why do you believe that, you know, so many kids are reluctant to reach out or identify that they have issues?
Well, I don't know about you, but I would have thought that made me like a freak, and that I didn't want to admit that I couldn't handle it, that I wasn't cool enough to deal with it. There's really a lot of ego wrapped up in it, and fear of being ostracized, complete fear of being ostracized. So one gives that avenue to just come in. And the kids that are sometimes in the biggest trouble get sent through suspension exchange, and they're in there with other kids. And I'll tell you, this came out of me with 36 years of recovery, realizing that I believe, Jason, no one could have stopped me. That's what I believed. And that I know today through human connection, it's possible.
When for me, the reason why I say it, because I was one of those individuals, 15, 16 years ago, but I also believe, and again, I'm not in the situation anymore that I was back then, but I just feel like there was not nearly the education, there was not nearly the research, there was not really, you know, as far as the education and outreach, there was not that was there versus what we have today. So I feel like there's so much more, and there's a lot more people that are sober. There's a lot more people that are high profile, people that can be inspirational, motivational, and actually mentors, or people that you look up to that get, you know, sobriety almost is taking a corner, cut the corner of, it's almost kind of cool. So I just feel like I feel like there's been a change, and there is a lot more people, and there's a lot more people getting sober young. So I just was curious as to why there was always such an issue, because I agree, and I relate to that completely as an individual when I was in high school, but I feel like times have changed so much, and maybe they haven't. That's why I was just curious.
No, because when you said it, you nailed it. It's kind of cool. And actors and sports people, and all that, they're not their peers. Their peers are the people they're sitting next to getting high with. And if they step outside that to say, I'm not going to do that anymore, that's a big leap. That's why one is like a step up. And then we bring in those people where they're like, they have a space to be able to listen to you, to listen to somebody. And I usually say this, consider this. And one of the things I say to them is this: you can love getting high. And it freaks them out. They're like, what is she saying? I'm like, no, you can love it. You can love drinking. You can love all of it. But someday you're going to learn, like a bad relationship, you can love something, but if all it does is bring you down and take you off course, then baby, you got to let that go. But you can love it, but one day at a time, you got to move through it. And I will tell you, they just need that space for that moment, Jason, that moment, their moment of clarity.
Well, you hit the nail on the
You
head.
know,
I described my addiction as, at first it was fun, it became a lifestyle, and then it became a way of survival. So I think you hit the nail on the head with all of those things. And I know there are so many people out there that are listening and watching that have kids and that are in this situation. So I think that's great information, and I'm excited to have you answer some of the questions that are coming in. Sorry, we had a horn go off. All right.
Yeah.
Next, last but not least, we got our beautiful Rupa. Rupa, so as a psychologist, and you work in so many different spaces, you know, and I kind of want to just turn this over to you, as, you know, working with family, couples, you know, addiction recovery, grief and loss, trauma, group counseling. What with the people that you've seen prior to COVID to now, what are some of the biggest shifts that you've seen that people are struggling with, and what are some of the things that you're giving them as advice to take away?
Thank you, Jason. And it's my honor to be part of the beautiful, wonderful, and very knowledgeable people. Can you hear me? I speak very soft usually. Can you hear me well? Jason? Okay. So during this, you know, difficult time that we are all facing, I usually notice that there's a lot of divorce rate also happening, a lot of separation, because due to this, a lot of anxiety, uncertainty that couples or the family that are facing. So having this, they come, you know, I related with them how they can really have more stability. And stability is not just in terms of physical, you know, health, stability of the emotional, and the stability in terms of they are not feeling that they are, you know, alone. So I addressed that how family and the couples or individual, they can be connecting within themselves to, you know, have more self-compassion, self-love, because self-compassion is a cultivation. It's a muscle that we need to really exercise, practice it, expand it, because we do not think compassion can be, you know, to practice, right? So they learn that when you're coming, you know, when I'm with them, they just feel they're not alone. I am with them, with their struggles. So I make sure that we are together journey that having. So having that, because in this time or during that, you know, different time, the struggles they're having, a lot of times, most of the times they feel very alone. They're disconnected, like as we all have mentioned that, they're disconnected not just only from the family, with themselves. There is a false attachment they grow with their, you know, substance. And it's very hard for them to let go of this substance. So they learn to how really to love themselves, to accepting themselves. When they have this self-acceptance, self-love, and care for them, and there's a sense of that, they start to trusting themselves. So I model them how to love yourself and trust yourself so they can trust themselves. So this is how the dynamic that I work with them. And I work, like you have mentioned, my bio, that work with a lots of trauma client. And the trauma during this time also re-trigger, because we have a lot of different trauma that patients are coming or anybody who's having it. But having this, there's a other kind of those old trauma when an unresolved trauma also triggering during this time. So those trauma also being addressed, they're learning that how they can have a better understanding, and to work with the modality applied is the EMDR, because EMDR, it helps to really reprocessing your unresolved trauma through your left and right, hemisphere of the brain, and it creates a new meaning, new connection to the frontal cortex of the brain. So they learned that how we not helpless, we are not alone. So there is a therapist there is the facility you provide, that you are here to feel like safe, and you can discovering about a lot of new insight and to build that new strength. So with that couple individual is the part of my goal, that how they can be attuned with their own emotion, how they can listen to themselves, because sometimes they're not even aware what message they are giving to themselves and how they are really relating to living it. And the fear is a big one. The fear that it's push us a lot of area that they act on it, that they're not even aware of it. So they're learning how to really embrace the fear. They're learning that what strength can we take from this right now, the current fear or the struggle they're having with their addictions. And the sobriety is not just only that you're sober from your substance, but you have to sober from the emotional sobriety. So they connected all those dots that to really allow themselves to have to, embrace it themselves. I cannot hear you. Are you saying anything? Okay. So the part of that, the self-love and empathy is so important, because the empathy, when we really grow the empathy, we start to really, we feed ourselves the side that is always the feed. I'm having some, sound here coming and going. Can you hear me?
You're perfect. You're perfect. Sorry, we're going because we have a producer on the back, guys, so he has to mute and unmute us. But I will bring up a question for you, because you said this time has brought up a lot of trauma for individuals, right? Mm-hmm. And I personally think, I think everybody's experiencing some form of trauma now. No?
That's what I'm saying. And so this is a lot of different types of trauma. Some, it's a lot of uncertainty there, right? And there is a lot of loss there. Loss is not just only that physical loss, also that job loss, also that relationship loss, right? Financial. So a lot of different aspects that the trauma creates. Trauma, we're not understanding only to somebody get sexual or the war or accident. Trauma comes a lot of different stages. It could be emotional trauma, right? A lot of time we look at it just to distress. A lot of time is that betrayal. So there's all different aspects that the trauma they're experiencing it, and also that feeling of that sometimes a lot of unresolved trauma that they're not aware of it, that also triggers those current trauma.
Well, it's fascinating, because for me, I always thought trauma was if you were beaten, if you were raped, you were molested, but there's so many different ones that fall underneath that. Can you talk a little bit more about that? Because I think there's a lot of people out there, because I didn't know that I had self-inflicted trauma that I did myself. And I never was able to identify that until I talked to a professional and really got that. So can you, and I know you just gave some examples, but can you talk a little bit more about that? Because I think there's a lot of people out there that, didn't have to have that crazy experience that we all understand as trauma, but they may have had things that have happened to themselves that they can't really maybe identify with, and maybe it's something they should seek to get help on.
Mm-hmm. Thank you, Jason. The trauma, a lot of times that when in a relationship, right? Relationship could be with your partner, could be with your parents, because we always relating with someone. So during the time, there's a lot of verbal abuse goes on, a lot of, that creates also trauma too. You start to really believing those things. And you start having a self-doubt about your own strength. And so that's another kind of emotional trauma that's creating. The trauma could be that you're witnessing at home that parents have been, pushing. Sometimes we look at like, oh, we just pushed. It was not my parents were physically beaten up where they bled, black and blue eyes, all those things. But even that, the aggressions, they're there. They are witnessing, even they are not participating. That also creates a trauma too, the emotional trauma. So the trauma, and also you could be witnessing somewhere you're going at, right, in the neighborhood or somewhere in your friends, in the party. A lot of different things you're witnessing, you're not aware of it, that how that is been, it really impacted me, because it's very hard. When you have a trauma, we have a, related, two different way. Either we freeze or we just, react, right? So not everybody will be, react to trauma same way. So those unresolved, understanding the trauma, that actually the body keeps a score. You probably heard about, there is a good book, it's called Body Keeps a Score, because sometimes we do not think, okay, I can function, in my mind, I'm not feeling anything, but your body remembers certain trauma. In my, practice, I have seen it. A lot of my clients, that body reaction is different, because I also work with the somatic. And so the part of the trauma, a lot of different levels that we are carrying it in our daily life. And it creates a lot of shame too. Trauma also brings a lot of shame, because you start to really, sometimes that you feel the shame and guilt is a big one, right, in our sobriety. Yeah. Because that's the part is kind of like a hold us back, hold us down, and it takes us a lot of depression. So the all area that person really learn how to really love themselves, how to really accepting and to let them go, because the more we holding it, what's happening, we are not having enough space, enough room within ourselves. And this is where it comes. I also teach mindfulness. I gave a talk in a different university, mindfulness. I gave a retreat in a different university. I stay in the campus. And so, and also my private practice, I gave the workshop, 3-4 days retreat. So in the mindfulness is that we're learning that how we really embrace ourselves, who we are. How can we really develop this, the part that sometimes we always fight with it, not liking ourselves, how we can like ourselves, how we can be a good friend to myself. Before I become a friend, I want to be a friend to others. So therefore, when the friendship doesn't go away, so I can really still feel stable, like a tree. In the stormy days, and the tree on the top of the tree is moving, but your trunk remain grounded.
Well, if you got that solid foundation, that's where it's really at. And I mean, it's crazy that you say that though, because shame, what I always used to live in is I came up with the acronym, shame is self-hatred against my existence. And that's something that I always live by. But one of the most beautiful things, so if you guys are going through trauma, it can really hold you back, just like substances can. I mean, there's so many different things that can hold you back. I think you gave so much information on that. But one of the best gifts of working through my trauma and getting sober, and I think the panel would agree with me with this, is that I got to know myself. Yes. And I finally, it took me many, many years, but I finally got to know who I am. I no longer have an overinflated ego with an underestimated sense of self-worth. So, this is, trauma is a huge thing. And I think that's why we are hitting it home. And I really appreciate that. And thank you so much for your information.
You're welcome.
All right. I totally blew it. Rev, I am so sorry. Alex already came in and gave me a knuckle sandwich. So, Rev, I just got too excited, you guys. I struggle with having too much caffeine still. If you can't tell, I got a lot of energy. So, Rev, and one of my favorite topics of all of this whole thing is spirituality, connection. For me personally, I'm a believer. God, he is somebody I reach out to every single day. I've learned when I get my hand off the door handle, he continues to open doors. He is a big part of this. So we're in a spiritual warfare. That's something that I mean, that's my belief. I think we are in a battle right now. I think there's a lot of good versus evil out there. What is it from your perspective and how you're helping people get a better understanding and how to live in faith rather than fear? What are some of the things you can bring home for us?
Okay, so thank you so much. I'm just grateful to be here. there's a term called the sweeper. So I just feel like I'm the sweeper. I come in last, and so all is well. I'm used to that. So I just want to say, you know, it's an honor to be here, and it's so powerful to hear everyone, Lynn and Hillary and the doc and Jana, you know, just all these different perspectives. And Rupa, we work hand in hand. So I'm grateful to be in her presence today. I want to say, you know, I have a different mindset. I'm not necessarily looking at this as warfare. That's not my approach. What I know is this, that there's a power greater than all of what is happening in the world. And as we tap into that, we get to change and transform. So one of the things I'd like to bring, you know, and this is from my spiritual teacher, Reverend Michael Bernard Beckwith, is that we can be pushed by pain or pulled by a vision. We can be pushed by pain or pulled by a vision. And so what I use that as is, I remind our women and men that pain has pushed you to this point of your life. Now let's capture a vision. So they actually vision with me. Each client has to go through a process called life visioning, and they vision with me to, number one, why you're here. So if someone says to me, oh, you know, the judge brought me here, or my parents brought me here, or, you know, whatever other story they make up, I always go back to them, because I lead them back to themselves. And I say, oh no, you brought you here. Your actions in the world is what brings you here to this point. It's no one else but you on a soul call. And so I remind individuals of a soul call, that they're on a soul call, that our souls will always call us to our own healing. And in doing that, even when our clients leave, and we've been with women for so many years, we have men now, but I just keep focusing on the word women, so pardon me. As our women are leaving, we vision for their leaving, for the next phase of their evolutionary expansion. And what I love is the fact that I can work with individuals from whatever backgrounds they're from. So I'm aware of different understandings. So instead of being religious, we do spiritual awareness. And I focus on necessity, meaning that nothing has been created that isn't needed. Nothing. And that includes them. And I sometimes bring it down to these small points, like we have a lot of hummingbirds around. And I say, you know, if a hummingbird has everything it needs to be a hummingbird, it even has the right flower to go to, why wouldn't you? And so I focus on, you know, within yourself, there's enough. You have everything, and that you are an expression of something greater. You know, Lynn spoke to the microcosm. Well, we're the microcosm of the macrocosm of something greater than ourselves. Whether you call it God, universe, higher power, Allah, Jehovah, Yahweh, no matter what name you may call it, there's something greater than us, and it wants us to be here. And this presence called us forth, and on a soul level, we said yes to it. We said yes to this existence. And now that you're here, you have everything within you to heal, to change, to transform, to uplift. It's in you already. Now, let's call that your spiritual DNA. Let's tap into that. How do we tap into that? Prayer, meditation, contemplation. Every morning with the women, 4 mornings a week, I do a guided meditation. With the men, 3 days a week, I do a guided meditation. On Fridays, we do a beach meditation. We actually go to the ocean and meditate. I do one-on-ones with each client, which brings it more personal with their individual work. And then I also do spirituality, which has been online on our Facebook page on Thursday nights. We're going to be going private again pretty soon, alumni. But we've been able to bring this pandemic or this quarantine time, we're able to bring people in so they can get a remembrance of what they had when they were in treatment. You know, what did you have? Oh, I remember there was a higher power. Oh, we used to do affirmations. Oh, yes, we used to sing, you know, and bringing those thoughts in, which is tapping into Hillary, that creativity, that expansion, you know, and understanding that I may not know medical terms like the doc does, yet I know that it affects the mental state. When you're singing and when you're affirming, we create mantras. You know, what's your mantra today? How do you want to stand? Every morning they set intentions. Who do you want to be? Not your goal, what you want to do, but who you want to be today. I want to be more love. I want to be more joy. I want to be at peace today. I want to be more calm. I want to do the next right thing, right action. And we set intentions. Every client sets intentions every morning. And before they go to bed at night, they write a gratitude list. Although you may have had a bad day, what are you grateful for? You have life, you have breath, you woke up, you have a chef preparing your meals. That's just a little addition I want to add in. You have hot and cold water, running water, you have a roof over your head, you know, and just to let them know how important those things that we may walk by every day and not even think about, how important those things are. And then how important they are. How important they are. And I want to just say this, and I apologize, I get a little emotional. You know, I know that we say that they're addicts. That's what the world says. Yet I know that there's a divine self, there's a divinity, and there's a part of them that has never been harmed, hurt, or endangered. That part of them, they get to tap into. And so for those who are in the world, who are in the quarantine, I say the same thing. Yes, it's a hard time. Yes, things are painful, but yes, there's something to be grateful for. Yes, you can be intentional about your day. Yes, you know, you can speak a word of affirmation. Yes, you can have a mantra. My mantra is God is for me, just a remembrance. And so when we start remembering these things, it wakes us up. It reminds us of the truth of our being, that we are more than just human beings. We're spiritual beings in the human condition, and that there's some part of us that's far greater than the pain and the suffering. There's a part of us that is so magnificent that we can overcome anything in the human condition. And so that is what I get to do. I get to do this for 10 years. And then lastly, tapping into teens. I run a teen program at Agape International in LA. And the teens are Zooming in from all over the country now. And so we've got Zoom. This is a gift right here, to even be grateful for Zoom, because I'd rather Zoom in with you than be alone in my room today. And so there's so many gifts that are coming from this experience. I recommend people tap into spiritual practice every day. Acknowledge something greater than you, because if it's just me, it's heavy. But when I know there's something greater than me that's for me, oh my goodness. It's beautiful, it's powerful. I could just go on and on.
Well, your energy is so vivacious. I mean, you just bring so much joy. I mean, you literally light up the screen. And there's so many things I want to touch on, but I have a question. I know you touched on it, but I want to have a specific question I'm curious about. Is a lot of people struggle with spirituality and or some form of connection with a higher power. Yeah. What is your advice for those that struggle with that?
Well, I have to say, you know, I meet those people all the time. And let me say this, it doesn't matter whether you have a spiritual awareness or not. Gratitude is the highest form of prayer, whether you know it or not. This is what I understand. Gratitude is the highest form of prayer. So to tap into gratitude, to be intentional, that means you have a purpose for the day, because most of us have been living an unintentional life. We've allowed life to just throw us around. But imagine waking up in the morning going, you know, I intend to be kinder today, or I intend to serve today, to help on those hotlines. I intend. So how do you want to intend? It doesn't matter what your background is to be intentional, to be grateful, you know, to journal your thoughts and to listen for something more positive to come through. I mean, these are practices that anyone can do. Yet, even those who say they don't believe in a higher power, they do. And they may say they don't, but I mean, I've had atheists, well, I believe in humanity. Well, humanity is your higher power. Let's speak to humanity. What is humanity? To serve. What is humanity? To honor. What is humanity? Integrity. What is humanity? I mean, hey, we can serve that.
Well, I'll share something with you. I had a guy, there was a guy who was really struggling with spirituality, and he goes, you're not going to convince me in anything. So I took him down to the beach, and the waves were kind of big. I said, hey, go try to stop that wave. Exactly. And he tried, and knocked him right on his butt. And honestly, for about 6 months, the ocean became his higher power. So I think it's how you look at it. And I mean, the gratitude, I just want to share, and developing a habit when you do gratitude. If you do it consistently for 21 days, how your mindset will actually change. And every single day for the last 2 years, every morning I wake up and I do 3 things I'm grateful for, but not only what I'm grateful for, but why. Because I believe a lot of the meat is underlying in the why. I mean, because I'm grateful for this group, but why? Because I've learned and I've connected with so many individuals, and I've taken so much away today, and it put me in a better mood. My spirit is lifted. There's so much that goes behind it. Right. So I really, this is as a piece for me that's worked is not only what, but why. And the big.
I'd like to add to that. I like it at night also because, sometimes you go through a day and, a lot of we do the 10 step at night. Well, you may have been a piece of work that day. Like, how are you going to go to bed on that after doing the 10 step? So I like gratitude at night also before you go to bed. How about sleeping on gratitude? You get a sounder sleep. You feel more at peace with yourself. So yes, gratitude has many ways of being acknowledged. And I know it's powerful. And I do believe, as my teacher has taught me, gratitude is the highest form of prayer. It's the highest form.
Well, Rev, I love what you're saying. I mean, I think one of my favorite quotes resided when you were talking is, all great change proceeds through chaos. All these experiences and things that we've gone to are our greatest assets. Mm-hmm. So
well, you could say it takes breakdown to have breakthrough. So we get to have breakthrough now.
Take your setbacks to comebacks. I agree with you. I love it. So, all right, guys, this is phenomenal. We're going to jump into, again, thank you, Red Songbird Foundation. Thank you, Trace Vistas. Thank you, Safe Harbor. Thank you guys all so much for this incredible time. Where if you guys are okay, we're going to take some questions. We've got a lot coming in. So I'm just going to go in order if that's okay. So they're going to be specific for everybody. Dr. Dan, the question is for you on the topic of access to chemicals. Do you think there are areas in the media, society, and such that are overstimulating our youth on the normalcy of using?
Yeah, totally. And it actually comes from non-addictive drugs. Doctors are pressed for time. They don't spend a lot of time getting to know the patient. It's much easier, just quicker, write a prescription for a mood stabilizer or antidepressant. And that reinforces the fact that there's a chemical that your brain needs, and without it, it's not going to work very well. And your brain needs some help, and we have the solution, some synthetic chemical that has tons of side effects. So people are looking for a chemical solution. And then you get into addictive drugs. And the problem, now you used to be able to kind of get away with some drug use like marijuana 40 years ago or something and get in and out of it. But now you don't even have to become addicted to overdose. Kids are using once or twice and then they overdose. The drugs are much more powerful now. They're cheaper now. They're much more available now than 30 years ago.
What do you think would be do you have any advice to that? I mean, what we could do to shift that?
Yeah, I think doctors need to go back, because I'm a doctor. I'm looking at my point of view, spend some time with the patient and find out really what's going on. If they're like 90% of my patients are addicted to something, they just need to get off their drug. And they come in and they're trying to stay sober, and they're on 2 antidepressants and 2 mood stabilizers and an antipsychotic. And, they just need to, 90% of the people I think that are on antidepressants don't need it. They're just depressed because they're taking drugs, and they need to get off the drugs, and then their brain will heal. Some people do need antidepressants. Well, but kids, I think in high school even, are kind of growing up with the idea like something's wrong with your brain and you need a chemical to fix it.
Well, yeah, I think one thing that I'll just throw in there is it's crazy to see over the years with working with you and many other professionals, how many people come in misdiagnosed with stuff. And then when they're under psychosis and they're on different things, they're put on all these different SSRIs, these different drugs, and they're misdiagnosed. And I mean, when you alleviate, you remove the substance and you actually can see where they're at and properly diagnose them, a lot of the times they don't need that. So very good. All Arlene, people are loving the gratitude, my friend. How important is gratitude in maintaining spirituality?
Well, you know, with gratitude alone, it could maintain spirituality. I mean, I think there's many aspects that we do. What's powerful about gratitude is, and I know Melody Beattie has a beautiful writing about gratitude. Gratitude shifts you from what you don't have to what you do have. It changes your perspective from I don't have enough to, wow, I have this, this, and this. But not just have, it also switches you to, wow, you know, what I think is so bad, there's so much good that's happening in my life. It brings your attention to the greater good. And there's always greater good happening. But when you're not focused on it, there's a saying, what you're interested in is interested in you. So when you're interested in gratitude, when you're interested in looking for and seeking that greater good, it becomes bigger in your life. And you start seeing more of that than what's so wrong, what went wrong, what's gonna go wrong. You know, it gets to keep you present in, wow, there's a present here in my life. Even, you know, I had a woman, she was about 60 years old. She says, I've never been grateful for my breath before. I said, yes, that's my focus. Even being grateful for the breath you're breathing. You have oxygen supplied. You don't have to seek it. You don't have to make it. It's here. It's yours to have. I mean, just things like that is what brings gratitude its power.
Yes, I love it. I love it. Hillary, Lynn. This is a great question. From a parent's perspective, what is the most effective thing to do to support a child that may be having and or struggling with isolation?
It's a great question. It's reaching out. It's listening to Rev and getting on those Zooms and knowing that during this pandemic, one had two distinct lines of support when we started. It was on campus and in the community. On March 13th, I felt this coming. I have my finger on the pulse. We created a platform for One Online, and we've done 139 experiences from kids, from groups of connection to virtual guitar and surf lessons. It's getting them in a space. It's getting them connected. And as a parent, it's reaching out. We have a parent group Saturday morning that I run with Candy Finnegan for one. It's free. It's open to any parent. Go to oneoncampus.com or One on Campus Instagram, which is ONE. You'll see the links. Get on there. Ask questions. There's no stupid questions. Bond with other parents. Bring kids into a space where truth can happen. It doesn't always have to be at them, because if you go at them as a parent, they're going to retreat. We can do that work for you. We've created the space. It's for
Lynn,
you, and it's free.
on that same topic, have you found that peer support is beneficial at a younger age and also allows the youth to be more vulnerable with each other?
100%. Kids don't know feelings from potatoes. You know, I was able to do a pilot program. They hear feelings and feelings take them over, and they don't even know what this wave is. And I did at Inston Middle School, we did a pilot. Those kids, by coming together, and most of them weren't up for suspension. A couple were. I love those knuckleheads. But bringing them together in a room where you had your socially awkward, your academic overachiever, you know, your troubled boy who stole a car in 7th grade, like he was my fave. But in there, I mean, I don't have favorites, but you know what I'm saying. So in that group, they connect and start to learn, oh my gosh, like that cheerleader doesn't have it all going on. Like she goes home to an alcoholic father. Like I am telling you, I just got goosebumps. Truth comes into that room. It's not therapy, but it's the most therapeutic thing they will ever experience. And it gives them emotional maturity. And I just want to say one more thing, that, and there are some kids that do need ADHD meds. There's my disclaimer. Okay. So I'm not attacked, but I'll probably be attacked anyway. When we allow kids to be medicated at 6 because they're kicking a chair in front of them in class and it's disruptive, instead of just say, hey, part of the brain development, right? When we medicate, and then when they're in high school, they start getting high and we tell them, you can't do that. You can't use drugs. Well, why? You gave them that when they were 8. They're taking the edge off. Like we have to look at our participation. Some kids do need medication, 100%, but 35 years working in this community, I can tell you in my layman's opinion that the 80%, and I'm being generous because I'm trying to be measured, do not. And when we create this space for truth for parents and for kids, shift can occur, and they build, let me just say, their internal coping mechanism. parents need to know that when you medicate or you go, it's just pot, or they're just drinking, know that you are robbing them of the ability to build that internal coping mechanism to feel pain, to feel hurt, to feel loss, to feel joy, and know that it will all change and you're going to be okay. You don't need something on the outside to fix the inside. God's within. There's a spirit within. They're not ready for that yet, but we can take them there. So I know that's a long answer to a short question, but I think it's important.
No, I love
Parents
it. I
have a
always say there's no
responsibility.
normality in escaping reality. So I like that. For the panel, you guys, this is from Charlie. Rupa, I think I'd like to hear you first and whoever else wants to chime in. But he just said, thank you all so much for your wisdom. As a trauma survivor and a recovering alcoholic, I developed an overative habit of automatic negative thinking and self-sabotaging. So I call it maybe hypercritical, right? Can Jason or other panelists talk about the best practice from changing this pattern of negative thinking? Rupa, what would your thoughts be?
Very good question. And this is probably, you have trauma, not trauma. A lot of time we notice that we have the negative thinking goes on. It's kind of like a ongoing. I would say whenever the negative thoughts coming, embrace it. Not to feel discouraged, to saying like, oh my gosh, why am I having the negative thinking? Now, when you're coming the negative thinking, when you embrace it, you're creating a more space. So you might want to address that, okay, acknowledge that I'm having a negative thinking, label them, neutral label. This is my negative thinking. And then take a deep breath. And with the, take a deep breath in and out, and then address it like, what alternative thinking can I address to that negative thinking?
Powerful.
Mm-hmm.
I'd like to say something on this.
Please.
Because there were a lot of things I had to go through even after getting sober. And I discovered being brought to my knees with my codependency and love addiction stuff that really got me to a suicidal place with double-digit sobriety, mind you. I really discovered this truth that my core belief about myself, the core belief that still deep down, I'm here walking red carpets, I'm achieving great things. And deep down, I still had a core belief of feeling dirty and still feeling unlovable and still feeling unworthy. And I was like, oh my gosh. And so I had to look deep down and I had to get to that full place of forgiveness of myself for where my alcoholism and drug addiction and abusive and core belief of abuse took me, and forgiving what happened to me and the way I was raised and the things that happened completely. And I thought I had already. And when I found out, and that was about becoming my own best friend and not allowing unacceptable behavior, even from myself, that replacing, like you said, Rupa, that self-talk. I am not allowed to talk trash about myself. I am human. I am a spiritual being, like you said, Reverend, that, I'm a spiritual being having a human experience. I will never rise above being human. And you know what? I am beautiful. I am lovable. I know it's like that Saturday Night Live thing, but it's true. I am worthy just because I was born. And just because I walked through some things that were dark and crazy, you know what? So have a lot of other people. And why not me having amazing things? So if you're experiencing that negative self-talk, you know what? That is not okay. Because you are fearfully and wonderfully made, my friend. You are fearfully and wonderful. And fearfully means with reverence, with reverence. And even if you don't believe it, there's one little thing I'm going to leave you with. My mind is my garden. My thoughts are my seeds. I can plant flowers or I can plant weeds. My friend, plant some flowers.
Boom.
I'd like to add something on that too, is the person that's asking the questions in recovery. I really think that the beginning of negative thinking, beating yourself up, inferiority, unworthiness, grief, loss, abuse, stress, that's the beginning of the relapse. Because if you've been using drugs addictively and drinking alcoholically, you've been doing a dance with negative thinking. Your drug actually works better the worse mood you're in. So if you can beat yourself up and take a drug, it has this unconscious kind of reward. You just gave a treat to your negative thinking. So most of my patients with addictions have like a PhD in negative thinking. They're actually frightened of no negative thinking because then the dance is over. So, you know, everybody has this negative thinking thing, you're not good enough, but drug addicts have it on steroids. And that's the beginning of the relapse, because part of your brain knows if you can wallow in that and magnify it, it's going to get a treat.
100%. One question, everybody, I'd love everybody to chime in, maybe 30 seconds. This will kind of be the last question. So I think a lot of us know this. A lot of people come up to this, and this is a common question we all receive. So if you know somebody that is struggling and you've tried to approach them before and it has not worked, what would be your response on what you should do next?
That's a good question.
Would you repeat that one more time, Jay? I'm sorry. Thanks.
Yes. So if you know someone is struggling, and
I'm not
you've
sorry.
approached-
I'm not sorry.
and if you've already approached them and you've tried to, you know, try to implement some form of boundary or do different things, because the reason why I want to bring this up too is because Dr. Dan, like Dr. Dan said, is a lot of the time with the tough love and different boundaries is it only takes once this time. Times are different. And there's been a lot of people that have gone out and tried to set boundaries and do different things. And that person's no longer here. So I think a question for people is, because they, you know, it's detaching with love to a piece, but what can you do if you've approached somebody, they have not been responsive to it, and you know that they're going deeper and darker? What can you do next?
Somebody just posted, have an intervention. I think if you can surround them with the love and let them know that you see this. Another thing for me is my mom. There were not a lot of pictures on the walls of me when I was growing up, all the chaos, and of my brother. My mom took me, there was something that snapped me, and she took me into this room that she had decorated with all of our pictures and talked about all the beautiful things along my life. And I think it's so important, because people feel like they're a piece of garbage. Instead of doing this, you have done this and this, and let them see the value they have is so big. It snapped me. So I don't know, that's just, have that intervention, have people talk about the value of that person. And so that's.
And it does depend on their financial situation. If they can afford an interventionist, any one of us they could reach out to get the verbiage, the tools. I think also, depending if it's a teenager or an adult, you have to look at the safety in the situation, but you're brave, and that we will support you in the risk, because you have to risk sometimes lose a friendship for them to save their own lives. And so we are here to help you find the space to be able to find those words, or the program that's right for that person, or interventionists to help them. And those people are out there, and they're in here as well.
Mm-hmm. I think what's vital is that we recognize to the individual that, number one, we know you're not just that. You're not just the addict. I think that's very important, because a lot of people come in thinking that's all they are and that's all they can ever be. Letting them know that I know that there's a greater self, there's a greater part of you that can overcome this, and we're here to support you. And again, you know, interventions are powerful, as I believe that was Dr. Schneider who left that, who's one of our doctors. But that is an opening right there to let people know we all come together as a family unit, as your friends, to let you know this behavior we can no longer accept in our life, and we want you to live a fulfilled life, and I want to support you in that. So that's
yeah, I want to piggyback off of that. You know, in communicating to your truth, if there is, you know, some sort of issue, also allowing that person the space in a sense too, and just conversation at times. I mean, I do it all the time working in admissions, you know, having discussion on things that they're struggling with or whatever the case is. Sometimes people just, they don't, kind of like what Rupa was saying, they don't lean into it and acknowledge it, you know? So just pure acknowledgement is powerful.
No, and I'll just add, I think it's really important people understand too, is there's no such thing as recreational use of heroin, of meth, of oxys, of benzodiazepine. I mean, just, you know, when you're crushing that, like I used to drink a bottle of vodka, you know, the person's got to be in a pretty miserable state to be in that. Again, this addiction does not dictate who we are, but it does not justify our actions. So I think it's imperative to get educated and to understand what that person's going through, because they're in a very deep, dark place to have to be able to go through each day, having to utilize a drug or a substance to that degree to get through the day. And again, it's it's, I think, getting educated too from our side. I think more people need to start doing these panels. More people need to talk about it. We need to continue raising awareness around this and let people know that they're not alone, because I think everybody here, there are outlets. We're telling you here, there's what, 7 of us on here, and we all, with all different organizations, we all work together. I mean, there's so many, there's resources coming out everywhere now, and there's no reason you shouldn't reach out, because again, it's to your point, a big part of what we deal with in this space, right? In all areas, trauma, substance abuse, mental health, is the resources. People don't have the resources, but there's a Red Songbird Foundation. They literally have funds to help you with scholarships. There's facilities that are giving in-kind scholarships. There's all different walks that are out there that are helping, because, and that's something that we're trying to do too, is to gain more resources for individuals that are out there that don't have the means to get the help that they need. So guys, this was phenomenal. I hope we do this every day. I feel way better. But seriously, thank you guys so much for taking the time out of your guys' busy schedules.
Right.
Oh my gosh,
And,
you guys.
Thank you guys.
Let's
Thank you
do
to
it
everybody
again.
who showed up.
Okay.
Love all of you.
Uh,
Thank you.
Love you too. Thank
Take
you.
care, guys. Thanks for joining us.